Giorgio had cooked as though the evening mattered, which meant it did. The small dining room was the one tucked off the main hall, 4 walls of old stone, a table that seated 6, dressed for 2, candles burning low. Layla stood in the doorway and took it in. Someone had made a decision about tonight. The flowers on the sideboard were fresh, the good wine was already open. Alex was at the sideboard when she heard her. She turned. She looked at Layla in the doorway. Cream dress, hair loose, grandmother's earrings, and something in her face did what it had been quietly doing all day without her permission. She handed her a glass and pulled out her chair and sat across from her and told herself this was just dinner. She didn't believe herself. They were careful at first, careful the way 2 people are when they've both decided to stop pretending and are figuring out what that looks like. Then Alex asked about the studio. Not, what do you do? She knew that. She asked, what were you building before all of this? And something about the specificity of it, the acknowledgement that there had been a before, that something real had been interrupted, opened a door in Layla that had been shut since she arrived. She talked, the real version, not the polished one. The collection 3 months from completion, the way pattern worked on her like a language. Her grandmother spreading a kilim across the floor when Layla was 12 and saying, look at what this is saying, not at the colors, not at the design, at what it was saying underneath all of that. Alex listened the way she did everything, completely. Glass untouched, eyes on Layla's face, not waiting for a gap to fill, but actually receiving what was being given to her. When Layla stopped, she held the silence for a beat. Your grandmother's earrings? Yes. She taught you to see beneath the surface. She said if you only looked at what was visible, you'd miss the whole conversation. Alex looked at her steadily. Is that what you've been doing here this whole time? Yes. And what have you found? I'm still reading. The corner of Alex's mouth moved. Not quite a smile, the thing that lived under one. The candles burned lower, outside the valley went dark. Neither of them suggested ending the evening, and Giorgio stopped appearing at the door, and Nico settled under the table at Layla's feet, and the night went on quietly around them, and Alex watched Layla laugh at something she said and thought, there it is. There's the thing I've been not letting myself look at directly. She looked at it now. It had been building all week, and Alex had noticed it the way you notice weather coming in. Not suddenly, not all at once, but in a series of small, unmistakable signs that you kept telling yourself meant something else. She had found herself in the garden on Thursday morning with her coffee, and no real reason to be there except that Layla was there with Nico. The 2 of them moving through the walled section in the early light, Layla crouched down, talking to the dog with the same attention she brought to everything, complete, unhurried, like Nico was worth the full version of her. Alex had stood at the edge of the garden for longer than she intended. She had told herself she was checking on the roses. She did not grow roses. On Friday, she had come past the kitchen and heard Layla laughing, a real laugh, low and warm, and had stopped in the corridor because she'd never heard that sound before, and it did something to her chest that she didn't file away fast enough. Marta had been telling her something about Giorgio's ongoing feud with the olive oil supplier, Layla laughing into her coffee, and the domesticity of it, the ordinary, settled warmth of it. This woman at her kitchen table making Marta laugh back hit Alex somewhere below the ribs and stayed there. She'd had 3 conversations with Layla that week in which she'd been the one to start them. She had also, on 2 separate occasions, walked past the library door on her way somewhere else and found a reason to go back. On Saturday, she had sat in the library across from Layla, who was reading, and done no work whatsoever. Just sat there with a report open in her lap, watching Layla trace a line in a book with one finger and tuck her hair behind her ear and frown slightly at something on the page, and thought, I am in serious trouble, and I have been for longer than I've admitted, and I have no idea what the hell to do about it. Nico had looked at her from the hearthrug with the expression of a dog who had worked this out some time ago. "Shut up," Alex had told him quietly. His tail swept the floor once. Alex had left before 8 on Monday. City meeting. Marta had set down Layla's lunch tray and straightened and said, not casually, nothing Marta said was casual, "She's meeting with Caruso this afternoon. He managed the agreement between the families." Then she left. Layla sat with that, between the families, the agreement. She turned it over the way she turned over patterns, looking for what was being said underneath the surface. Her father's debt had been called 18 months ago. If the agreement had been structured before that, before the default, then someone had decided the settlement before her father had even failed, which meant the failure itself might not have been the cause, it might have been the plan. She got up and found the estate records. They weren't hidden, they were just there, on the lower shelf, leather-bound ledgers, 40 years of the Romani family's business laid out in careful columns. She pulled the relevant years and carried them to the table and started reading. She was still there when she heard the car on the drive. Alex appeared in the doorway, still in her jacket, and stopped. She looked at Layla, she looked at the ledgers spread across the table, she looked at the years on the spines. She came into the room and sat down directly across from Layla. No armchair, no managed distance. She put her keys on the table and looked at the open ledger. "What have you found?" "That the agreement was in place before my father defaulted, which means someone anticipated he would or made sure he did." Silence. "Which is it?" "I don't know all of it. But you know some?" "Yes." Layla set the ledger down. She looked at Alex across the table, the jacket, the silver watch, the particular expression of someone choosing between versions of themselves. "I'm not asking you to defend it tonight. I just need to know, was I decided before I had any say in it?" Alex held her gaze. "There is a version of this I am not proud of." The room went very still. "Thank you," Layla said. "Not forgiveness, just the plain receipt of a true thing. For saying that." "That's all?" "For tonight, yes. I'm still reading." Alex looked at the ledgers, then at Layla, then, "Do you want company?" She slid one of the open ledgers across the table without a word. Alex picked it up. They sat across from each other and read while the valley went dark outside, and neither of them spoke, and the silence between them was the most honest thing that had happened in this house since Layla arrived. Past 11 when Layla finally closed the last ledger. She looked up. Alex had stopped reading some time ago and was watching her instead. The ledger closed on the table in front of her, expression open, the carefully maintained composure entirely offline. Layla stood and stretched. Alex stood too. They walked out together and down the hall, and at the foot of the stairs they stopped, the way they had stopped the night before. Only tonight, neither of them pretended it was nothing. Alex looked at her. Layla. Just her name, low and deliberate, like something held for a while finally being put down where it belonged. "Yes. Stay with me tonight. I want you there. I'm asking." The "I'm asking" landed. The care of it, the fact that she was making it a choice. Layla looked at her, the silver hair, the open expression, the woman who had sat down across from her tonight and said, "There is a version of this I am not proud of," and stayed anyway. "Yes, but I want to shower and change first. Give me 20 minutes. I'll come to you." Something moved in Alex's face. Relief. Want. The two of them together. "Okay." She went upstairs. Alex watched her go and stood in the hall for a long moment with Nico sitting at her feet, looking up at her. "Don't," she told him. His tail swept the floor twice. The room was quiet when Layla pushed the door open. She could hear the shower still running behind the closed bathroom door, the sound of water on stone, steam curling faintly under the doorframe. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her and stood in Alex's room properly for the first time. It was her entirely. Dark wood, clean lines, no excess, deep charcoal linen on the bed, a single lamp burning on the nightstand, the window cracked to let in the cool night air off the valley, a jacket on the back of the chair, the silver watch on the dresser, set down with precision. The room of a person who knew exactly who they were and had arranged their life to reflect it. Layla set her things on the chair and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the moment settling over her as she waited. The shower cut off. A minute of heavy quiet. Then the bathroom door opened and Alex came out with a white towel wrapped securely around her hips, another in her hands, working it through her damp silver hair, and stopped. She looked up and saw Layla sitting on the edge of her bed in a black silk nightgown, hair loose and dark over her shoulders, watching her with those steady, dark eyes, completely calm, completely present, completely there. Alex stopped drying her hair. Her eyes moved over Layla the way they did when she thought no one was watching, not quickly, not politely, but with the full, unmanaged attention of someone who had stopped pretending. The silk clinging to her curves, the dark hair fanned over her shoulders, the elegant line of her collarbone, the gold earrings still in. She stood there in her towel and she stared, and she didn't care that she was staring. Layla let her, holding her gaze with a quiet, devastating certainty. Finally, Alex crossed the room. She stopped directly in front of her, close enough that the radiating warmth of the shower washed over Layla's skin, and said, her voice a little uneven, rough around the edges, "Hey, you're here. You asked me to be here." A beat. The corner of Alex's mouth pulled in that specific, private way. "Yes, I did." She lifted her hand and laid it against Layla's cheek, a warm, heavy palm, slow and deliberate, and Layla leaned into it slightly, closing her eyes for a brief second before looking back up at her. "You've been wanting to do this for a while." "Longer than I've been honest about," Alex said quietly, her thumb tracing Layla's cheekbone. "Yeah." Layla reached up and covered Alex's hand at her cheek. She felt the slight sudden catch in Alex's breath, and then she rose from the edge of the bed, closing the absolute last of the distance between them. The first kiss was soft, slower than either of them expected, not urgent, not desperate, but deliberate, real. Alex's hand slid from her cheek into her hair, fingers threading deep through the dark weight of it, and she kissed her back with the full, careful attention she brought to everything she decided to do properly. Layla's fingers curled into the towel at Alex's waist, feeling the damp heat of her skin. They broke apart a fraction of an inch, their breath mingling. "Okay?" Alex whispered against her lips. "More than okay." Something massive released in Alex then, the last of it, the last held distance of two wives who had spent far too long longing for one another from across separate lives. She kissed her again, and this time there was heat in it, real, consuming heat. 10 days of not letting herself look at this directly, finally given permission to be what it was. She took Layla's face in both hands and kissed her like she meant it, deeply, tasting her completely. Layla kissed her back with an answering hunger, grabbing the front of the towel and pulling it loose. Alex walked her back onto the bed. Layla lay back across the charcoal linen and looked up at her, and Alex looked back, towel completely gone now, silver hair damp, teal eyes dark and dilated in the lamplight. Her expression was entirely stripped of everything she usually kept between herself and the world. No management, no composure, just her, looking at Layla like she was the only thing that mattered. She came down over her, burying her face in the crook of Layla's neck, kissing her throat, the curve of her jaw, the soft, sensitive skin below her ear.
Layla's hands slid up her back bare, smooth and warm, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. Alex worked her way back to her mouth and kissed her slowly, her tongue sliding thick and wet against Layla's. Layla parted for her, welcoming her deeper, and Alex made a low, helpless sound in her throat that she clearly hadn't planned to make. Layla felt it resonate in her own chest, like a match being struck. Alex moved her hands to the hem of the silk nightgown. She pulled back just enough to ask without asking, eyes locked on Layla's face, waiting, and Layla lifted her arms in answer. The silk came off in one clean, fluid motion, casting it aside. Alex went completely still. She looked at Layla laid out beneath her in nothing but black lace, the amber lamplight catching the soft contours of her body and the gold earrings she still hadn't taken out. Alex breathed out slowly through her nose, her voice dropping to a reverent, quiet murmur. "God, you're beautiful." Not performance, not a line, just a plain, involuntary truth of it, said the way things got said when a person forgot to filter themselves. Layla reached up, her fingers wrapping around Alex's jaw, and pulled her back down. Alex kissed her again, deeper, more demanding this time, and brought one hand down slowly, fingertips trailing down Layla's throat, over her collarbone, brushing lightly over her chest. Layla's breath caught sharply. Alex felt the reaction and did it again, slower and more deliberate this time, the pad of her thumb moving a slow, heavy circle over the sheer black lace. She watched Layla's face, watching her eyes flutter shut and her lips part as her body responded to the touch. Alex moved her mouth down, trailing wet, hot kisses along Layla's collarbone, her throat, lower still, until her lips met the lace. She parted the fabric with her teeth, her warm tongue finding the sensitive, aching tip of Layla's nipple. Layla's back arched violently off the bed before she could stop it, a helpless gasp tear from her throat. Her hand came up into Alex's damp silver hair, fingers fisting tightly, pulling her closer, holding her there. Alex pulled her flush against her and kept going, slow, wet, and thorough, suckling her until the lace was damp. The small, breathless sounds Layla was making, soft, involuntary, completely unmanaged, were doing something dangerous to Alex's ability to think. Reaching down, Alex removed the last barrier, the black lace, gone, and sat back on her heels. Then she pulled Layla into her lap.
Layla's legs wrapped securely around her waist, her bare thighs gripping Alex's hips. They kissed, open-mouthed, urgent and wet. Layla's hands were all over Alex's face and neck, while Alex's hands moved down her back, pressing her hips firmly against her own. Both of them were breathing harder now, the friction of their skin creating a heavy, electric heat. Alex moved her mouth to her neck, biting lightly, and Layla tilted her head back, letting out a loud, uninhibited moan that filled the quiet room. Alex smiled against her skin, the pure satisfaction of it breaking through her focus. She laid Layla back down, gently, deliberately, so that her head was toward the foot of the bed and came down over her. She kissed her mouth again, slow and deep, her tongue moving in a lazy, dominant rhythm against Layla's, while her fingers moved down between them, finding the slick, hot weight of her. She felt Layla's sharp intake of breath. She felt the incredible warmth of her, the unmistakable evidence of exactly what this was doing to her, and the sheer intensity of it hit Alex low in the stomach, making her close her eyes for a second. "Fuck," she said quietly, the words slipping out unbidden. She began to move her fingers slowly, sliding deep inside her, and Layla gripped her shoulder blades, her nails digging into Alex's skin. Alex worked her carefully, no rush, watching every micro response, adjusting her depth, learning her perfectly. Layla moved with her, her hips rolling up to meet every touch, completely given over to the sensation, just feeling the pure, aching pleasure of it. The sounds she made were quiet, continuous, and ragged, passing straight through Alex like an electric current. She felt Layla's nails drag lightly down across her back as she pressed closer, moving her fingers deeper, picking up the pace, until Layla's grip tightened to a clutch. Alex kissed her jaw, her throat. She started moving down again, trailing her mouth down Layla's sternum, her flat stomach, her navel. She felt Layla's abdominals tighten hard under her lips. She kept going, slower now, deliberate, and paused just above the heat of her thighs, tilting her head up. Layla was arched back, her head pressed hard into the mattress, but she lifted it slightly, looking down the length of her own body at Alex. Their eyes met in the dim lamplight. 1 second of absolute, unshielded understanding. Just that. Layla laid her head back down, exposing herself completely. Alex lowered hers. She took her time, using her mouth and her fingers together with a masterful, agonizing slowness. She paid attention to every single thing, the way Layla's breathing shattered into gasps, the desperate way her hips began to roll, the hand that came down into Alex's hair to hold her in place, and the other fisting the charcoal linen beside her. She felt Layla's thighs tense against her shoulders. She felt her body start to move faster, chasing the edge, no longer thinking about anything except the friction and the heat. Alex went with her, matching her rhythm, pressing closer, giving her everything she was asking for without words, until Layla's back lifted completely off the mattress. She came apart, quietly and completely, her voice breaking as both hands gripped whatever they could reach, her internal muscles pulsing tightly around Alex's fingers. Alex stayed there through the tremors, pressing one last soft, lingering kiss to the sensitive inside of her thigh. Then she moved her body up over Layla's, slowly, deliberately, and settled her full weight down. Layla was warm, slick, and flushed beneath her, breathing hard, a fine sweat sheen at her temples, completely undone. Alex looked down at her face, her own heart hammering violently in her throat. Layla opened her eyes, dark and heavy-lidded. They looked at each other. There was nothing left to say. Everything had already been said. Alex lowered her hips, and Layla felt the direct, heavy pressure of her. Her breath came out in a sharp rush, and her hands came up to Alex's back as Alex began to move. Slow at first, a rolling, grinding pressure, deliberate and deep, both of them feeling every point of contact. Layla's fingers dug into her back. Alex kissed her, and Layla kissed her back, tasting herself on Alex's lips, feeling an intense, overwhelming need for more. She moved with her, matching the rhythm, her hips rising to meet every push of Alex's. The sound of their breathing, the quiet room, the lamplight, and the cool air from the valley window all faded into the single narrow point of intense sensation between them. It built fast, the friction bringing them both closer to the edge. Layla flipped them. Alex landed on her back, the breath leaving her in a soft huff. Layla was on top of her now, straddling her hips, the slick contact never breaking. Alex made a sound that was not composed, controlled, or managed in any way, her hands flying up to grip Layla's hips securely. Layla began to move, slow, heavy grinds, then less slow, then not slow at all, riding her with a fierce, focused passion. Alex's head pressed back into the pillow, her face coming entirely undone. Layla watched her, seeing the absolute vulnerability on Alex's face, watching it carefully, completely, without looking away. The tension coiled too tight to bear. Layla picked up the pace, her movements frantic and deep, targeting the exact center of their pleasure. Alex shuddered violently beneath her, her hips jerking upward as a powerful orgasm tore through her body. A moment later, Layla let go herself, her whole body clenching around the sensation, her voice catching in her throat as her forehead dropped heavily to Alex's shoulder, riding out the long, pulsing waves of their shared release. Then stillness. Then just the sound of their ragged breathing. Layla collapsed fully against her chest, utterly spent. Alex's arms came around her immediately, both of them, tight, like a protective reflex, holding her against her heart before her mind could even process the action. They lay there for a long time. The lamp burned, the valley breathed outside the window. Neither of them moved or spoke, and neither of them needed to. At some point, the sweat cooled, and the breathing settled, and the room became just a room again, with two people in it, lying tangled in charcoal linen. Layla rested quietly on Alex's chest, her dark hair fanned out across the pale skin, while Alex's hand moved slowly, rhythmically through the dark strands. They talked, nothing heavy, not tonight. They'd both silently agreed to that. Layla asked about the dog, whether Nico had always been Alex's or if he'd come with the house. Alex explained how she'd found him on the road below the Cypress Drive 4 years ago, half-starved and extremely opinionated about the situation. Layla laughed quietly against her collarbone, the vibration warm against Alex's skin. Alex's arm tightened around her, pulling her closer. Layla ran her fingers slowly across Alex's stomach, tracing nothing in particular. She felt the muscle tighten under her touch. "I should tell you about Caruso properly, tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Layla agreed, her voice soft and sleepy. "Not now." "Not now," Alex said. "No." A comfortable quiet settled over them. Alex's fingers were still moving through her hair, a steady, soothing presence. Layla's fingers began to wander, moving slowly up from Alex's stomach, tracing a light path across her ribs. She let her touch linger, running her bare fingertips over Alex's nipples in a slow, tracing circle, watching the way the peaks hardened instantly under her touch. Alex let out a low, shaky breath, her chest rising sharply beneath Layla's hand as the muscle coiled again with a renewed, heavy warmth. "I don't know how to do this," Alex said quietly, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, though her hand came down to lightly rest on Layla's hip. It wasn't an apology, just a fact laid down. "I'm very good at most things. I have no idea how to do this." "I know." "You're not worried?" "No." "Why not?" Layla tilted her head up, resting her chin on Alex's chest to look at her. "Because I don't need you to know how. I just need you to stay in the room." Alex looked at her for a long moment, the intensity in her teal eyes softening completely. Then she pressed her lips to Layla's forehead, holding them there in a long, quiet promise. She pulled back after a moment, her throat dry, and looked at the ceiling. "Do you want water? I'll get—" She started to shift, making a move to sit up and slide out from under the linen, but Layla grabbed her arm firmly, her fingers hooking into her bicep, and pulled her back down into the mattress. "Later," Layla whispered against her skin. She shifted her weight, sliding back up Alex's body until she was hovering over her once more. She kissed her again, deep, slow, and full of a lingering, desperate affection. Alex's hand came up instantly to her hair, tangling in the dark strands, anchoring her down as the quiet room dissolved around them all over again. Marta came down at 6:30 as she always did, and found Layla at the stove. She was making coffee the proper way, on the flame, the way Marta had shown her, wearing a dark robe, hair loose, the gold earrings back in. She looked rested in a way she hadn't looked since arriving. Something settled, something present. Marta looked at her for exactly one moment, and then looked away and began taking things out of the refrigerator. After a while, "She takes it black, no sugar." "I know." Layla didn't look up from the stove. "She told me." Marta made a sound that was not a word and set the bread out and said nothing else, and quietly and efficiently laid the table for 2 people upstairs. Layla poured 2 cups. She took them both up.